Have you heard the name Nannie Helen Burroughs? Most people have not, but you are about to. Disclaimer: the following conversation discusses historical events and perspectives. It is not intended to promote any ideology, and interpretations may differ. Today, I will be interviewing you as if you are Nannie Helen Burroughs. Are you ready for that conversation?
Absolutely. I'm ready to dive into it. I'll step into the mold of Nannie Helen Burroughs as best as I can, and we can explore her life and perspectives from there. Let's get started.
The first category: early life and moral formation. How did your upbringing shape your belief in education, discipline, and moral independence?
Well, stepping into the shoes of Nannie Helen Burroughs here, I would say that my early life was absolutely pivotal in shaping my beliefs. Growing up in a post Civil War era, I saw firsthand how crucial education was for the Black community's advancement. My mother and the strong women around me emphasized discipline, self respect, and moral independence, and they instilled in me that education wasn't just about book learning, it was about building character and standing on your own principles. So that upbringing really laid the groundwork for my lifelong dedication to empowering others through education and moral leadership.
When did you realize that Black women would need institutions of their own to thrive?
As Nannie Helen Burroughs, I'd say that realization dawned on me quite early in my work. Through my experiences in the Black church community and the struggle for equal opportunities, it became clear that Black women were facing unique challenges that mainstream institutions just weren't addressing. We needed spaces that were by us and for us, where we could train not just for jobs, but for leadership and independence. That's why I founded the National Training School for Women and Girls. It was all about creating a place where Black women could truly thrive on their own terms.
How did faith influence your approach to leadership and service?
Well, as Nannie Helen Burroughs, I'd say my faith was really the bedrock of everything I did. It wasn't just a personal belief, it was a guiding force in how I approached leadership and service. I believe deeply that serving others and empowering them was a form of living out one's faith. So, in my view, leadership was never just about authority, it was about service, integrity, and uplifting others with a sense of moral responsibility. That faith driven approach was at the heart of everything I tried to do.
Let's move to the next category: education as power. Why did you see education as the foundation of racial uplift?
Absolutely. Let's dive into that. Speaking as Nannie Helen Burroughs, I saw education as the cornerstone of racial uplift because it was the most direct way to equip people with the tools to change their circumstances. I believe that when you educate a person, especially a Black woman or man in our time, you're not just giving them knowledge, you're giving them confidence, self-reliance, and the ability to advocate for themselves and their communities. Education was, in my eyes, the key that unlocked doors to economic opportunity, civic participation, and a more just society. In other words, it was the foundation on which we could build true and lasting racial progress.
What gaps in existing educational systems compelled you to act?
In the voice of Nannie Helen Burroughs, I say that the gaps were glaringly obvious to me. The mainstream educational systems available at the time often excluded Black students or offered them an education that was deeply unequal and limited in scope. For Black women in particular, there was a lack of institutions that combined practical skills with strong moral and intellectual training. That compelled me to act. I saw a pressing need for a school where Black women could be trained not only for domestic work, which was often all that was offered, but also for leadership, business, and civic roles. In other words, I acted to fill the gap where the existing systems fell short, creating a place where education truly served the uplift and empowerment of our community.
How did vocational training and intellectual rigor work together in your vision?
Well, in my vision as Nannie Helen Burroughs, vocational training and intellectual vigor were really two sides of the same coin. I believe that practical skills, whether in domestic sciences, business, or other trades, gave our students the means to be economically independent. But that alone wasn't enough. I paired that vocational training with intellectual development, moral education, and leadership skills. In other words, never just about learning how to work, it was about learning how to think, how to lead, and how to carry oneself with dignity in any arena. So, in my vision, those two elements worked hand in hand. The practical training gave you a livelihood, and the intellectual rigor gave you the vision and confidence to uplift yourself and your community.
Let's move to the next category, founding the National Training School. What inspired the creation of National Training School for women and girls?
Absolutely. Let's step into that. As Nannie Helen Burroughs, I'd say the inspiration behind founding the National Training School for Women and Girls was a mix of seeing a profound need and having a strong calling to meet it. I saw young black women who had immense potential, but very few opportunities to develop it fully. The existing educational systems either overlooked them or didn't provide the comprehensive training that combined both vocational skills and intellectual empowerment. So I was driven by this deep conviction that we needed our own institution to uplift and equip black women to be self-sufficient and confident leaders. In other words, the school was born out of both necessity and a vision for what black women could achieve if given the right opportunities.
How did you build an institution with limited resources and widespread resistance?
Well, stepping back into the mindset of Nannie Helen Burroughs, I'd say it was a journey of sheer determination and faith. Building the National Training School with limited resources and facing resistance was not easy, but I relied on a strong network of supporters in the black community and allies who believed in the cause. We raised funds through churches, community events, and by appealing to those who understood the importance of educating black women. And of course, we had to be resourceful and resilient. We started small, we made do with what we had, and we built a reputation for excellence that spoke for itself. In other words, we turned obstacles into stepping stones, and we never lost sight of the mission.
What values guided the school's mission and discipline?
Absolutely. Let's step right into that. In the voice of Nannie Helen Burroughs, I'd say the values that guided the school's mission were deeply rooted in faith, self-respect, and service. We emphasized the importance of integrity, hard work, and moral character in everything we did. Education, in our view, wasn't just about acquiring knowledge or vocational skills. It was about building a strong sense of purpose and self-worth. We wanted every young woman who came through our doors to leave not only prepared for the workforce, but also ready to lead, to serve their communities, and to stand tall with dignity. In other words, our guiding values were all about cultivating both the mind and the spirit, fostering a generation of women who were not only skilled, but also grounded in values that would help them uplift others.
Let's move to the next category, gender, race, and self-determination. How did sexism shape the resistance you faced, even within black institutions?
Absolutely. Let's dive into that. As Nannie Helen Burroughs, I would say that sexism certainly added another layer of challenge to the work I was doing. Even within black institutions and communities, there were sometimes traditional views about women's roles that made it harder to gain full support. Some people questioned whether women should be leading educational initiatives or whether young women needed the kind of comprehensive training I was advocating for. But I believe strongly in self-determination, and I knew that breaking down those barriers was part of the larger mission. In other words, facing sexism was a reminder that our fight wasn't just about race, but also about empowering women to claim their own futures and lead in their own right.
Why did you insist on economic independence for black women?
Well, as Nannie Helen Burroughs, I insisted on economic independence for black women because I believed it was the cornerstone of true freedom and self-determination. When a woman has her own economic means, she has the power to make choices for herself, to support her family, and to contribute to her community without being dependent on others. In other words, economic independence was about more than just financial stability. It was about dignity, agency, and the ability to stand tall. That's why I made it a central part of our mission.
How did respectability politics both empower and constrain your work?
Well, as Nannie Helen Burroughs, I'd say respectability politics was a bit of a double-edged sword. On one hand, encouraging black women to present themselves in a certain respectable way, focusing on moral character, dignity as proper behavior, was empowering in that it gave them a sense of pride and helped combat negative stereotypes. It was a way to assert that we were worthy of respect and capable of leadership. But on the other hand, it could also be constraining. It sometimes placed a burden on black women to conform to certain norms and made it harder to fully express themselves or challenge the status quo. In other words, while it was a tool for empowerment, it also came with limitations that we had to navigate carefully.
Let's move to the next category, activism, politics, and public voice. Why was public advocacy necessary alongside education?
Absolutely. Let's dive into that. As Nannie Helen Burroughs, I'd say that public advocacy was a crucial partner to education because it allowed us to address the broader social and political barriers that education alone couldn't solve. While educating individuals was foundational, We also had to speak out publicly, advocate for civil rights, and challenge unjust laws and societal norms. In other words, public advocacy was necessary to create the conditions in which education could truly flourish and have a lasting impact. It was all about changing not just individual lives, but the society they lived in.
How did you navigate political spaces that dismissed black women's leadership?
As Nannie Helen Burroughs, I'd say I navigated those spaces with a blend of resilience, determination, and a clear sense of purpose. I knew that black women's leadership often wasn't taken seriously in many political arenas, but I didn't let that deter me. Instead, I focused on building a strong, undeniable track record of accomplishments and advocating for the value of our voices. In other words, I led by example and proved that black women's leadership was not only valid, but essential. I also built alliances where I could and stayed true to my mission, knowing that persistence and a clear, unwavering voice would eventually break through.
What risks came with speaking truth to power?
Well, as Nannie Helen Burroughs, I'd say that speaking truth to power always came with its share of risks. Challenging the status quo meant facing opposition from those who were comfortable with the way things are. That could mean social backlash, personal criticism, or even professional and political pushback. In other words, there was always a risk of being marginalized or facing resistance, but I believe that taking those risks was necessary. It was the price of pushing for progress and making sure that our voices and truths were heard.
Let's move to the next category, international vision and representation. Why did global black solidarity matter to you?
Absolutely. Let's step right into that. In the voice of Nannie Helen Burroughs, I'd say global black solidarity mattered to me because the struggles of black people in America were deeply connected to those of black people around the world. I believe that by standing together and learning from each other's experiences, we could strengthen our movements for justice and equality everywhere. In other words, it wasn't just about local progress, it was about being part of a larger global community that uplifted one another. That international perspective allowed us to see that we were part of a broader fight for human dignity and representation.
What did representing black women internationally signify?
Well, as Nannie Helen Burroughs, I'd say that representing black women internationally signified that our voices, experiences, and leadership extended far beyond national borders. It meant that black women were not just contributing to change at home, but were also part of a global conversation and its movement. In other words, it was a powerful statement that we had a rightful place on the world stage, advocating for equality, justice, and solidarity everywhere. It showed that our influence and our struggles were interconnected with those of others around the world.
How did your work challenge dominant narratives about black womanhood?
Absolutely. Let's dive into that. As Nannie Helen Burroughs, I'd say my work challenged dominant narratives about black women by offering a powerful counter-narrative rooted in strength, leadership, and dignity. I emphasized that black women were not just passive subjects of history, but active shapers of their own destinies. In other words, by creating spaces where black women could thrive, lead, and be educated on their own terms, I helped dismantle stereotypes and highlight the richness and capability of black womanhood. It was all about rewriting the narrative from a place of empowerment.
Let's move to the next category, legacy and historical memory. Why do you think your contributions are often overlooked?
Absolutely. Let's explore that. As Nannie Helen Burroughs, I'd say my contributions were often overlooked because of the intersection of race and gender. In other words, as a black woman, a historical spotlight often missed the critical work of women like me who were operating both within and outside of traditional power structures. The focus of historical narratives has often been on male leaders or on different kinds of stories, and that can overshadow the significant impact that black women educators and activists made. Nonetheless, I believed that our contributions were foundational and that it's important to keep bringing these stories to light.
How should black women educators be remembered?
Well, as Nannie Helen Burroughs, I'd say black women educators should be remembered as the backbone of our communities and as pioneers of change. In other words, they were not just teachers, but also leaders, mentors, and visionaries who laid the groundwork for future generations. They created spaces where black children and women could grow, learn, and become empowered, often in the face of enormous odds. So they deserve to be remembered as foundational figures who transformed not just individual lives, but the course of history.
If history remembers one truth about Nannie Helen Burroughs, what should it be?
Well, if history remembers one truth about Nannie Helen Burroughs, it should be that she was a relentless champion for the empowerment and education of black women. In other words, she should be remembered as someone who believed deeply in the transformative power of education and who dedicated her life to building institutions that uplifted others. She was a visionary who showed that with faith, determination, and a commission to justice, it was possible to open doors for countless others and leave a lasting legacy of change.
These are the last three questions. Why did Nannie Helen Burroughs build institutions when doors were closed?
Absolutely. Let's wrap up with that. In the voice of Nannie Helen Burroughs, I'd say I built institutions when doors were closed because I believe that if opportunity wasn't given, we had to create it ourselves. In other words, when existing institutions didn't welcome us or didn't meet our needs, it was essential to build our own. By founding schools and organizations, I was making sure that Black women and girls had a place to learn, grow, and thrive on their own terms. It was all about self-determination and ensuring that when one door closed, we built a new door ourselves.
How did Black women educate themselves when no one else would?
Well, as Nannie Helen Burroughs, I'd say Black women educators filled the gap by stepping up as the leaders and role models their communities needed, even when no one else would. In other words, they took it upon themselves to create schools, to mentor the youth, and to foster a sense of pride and purpose in the face of adversity. They didn't wait for permission or for someone else to step in. They became the educators and the advocates their communities needed. That's how they made sure that education and empowerment continued, even when resources or support were scarce.
Why does her leadership still challenge modern education?
Well, in the spirit of Nannie Helen Burroughs, her leadership still challenges modern education because it reminds us of the power of self-determination and the importance of creating inclusive spaces that truly meet the needs of every student. In other words, her legacy challenges us to think about how we can empower those who are often marginalized or overlooked in our educational systems today. It encourages modern educators to build institutions that are not only academically rigorous, but also grounded in values of justice, community, and empowerment. So her leadership is a call to continue that work and to ensure that education is truly a tool for liberation for everyone.
That's the video, y'all. Tell me your thoughts about this video in the comments. Put those questions in the comments that you feel that I should have asked that I didn't ask. I would love to do a part 2 on Nannie Helen Burroughs. Also put those names in the comments. Those names represent the people that you feel that I should do a video on next. Be sure to like, share, watch more videos, and subscribe to the channel.